Okay, Nick, you wanted my perspective on your gameplay flaws. What I need to tell you is honestly the opposite of what I needed to tell Poverty. And I think I know why you and him are so opposed. What I said to Poverty, just as a preface, is that he is very good at the mechanics of the game and he understands his combos very well. He doesn't really have to worry about things like optimization or awareness so much. But what I told him is that he needs to decide what level of adaptation he feels is necessary to beat stronger players. He knows he is mostly defensive, and I let him know that, when you are that way, I will try to fuck with you. That's why sometimes in neutral, instead of weaving back and forth, I'll stand still, or I'll start teabagging, In every fighting game, there is a level of, you have to see if they're good at something, if they're capable of stopping something. Sometimes doing the same thing over and over is a good idea, sometimes it isn't. But it depends on the player and the temperament of your opponent specifically. In his case, I let him know that he does not adapt enough, or, to be more specific, he has the ability to adapt, but he does not feel he needs to do it that often. And he needs to start tailoring his gameplay towards specific players. That is, against me, he might want to be a little more brazen, but at the same time, his win rate was close to 50%. I don't know what the actual numbers were of our matches. I imagine it was something like 55 to 45 or ish. Maybe I won more than that, I don't remember. But I did not feel that anything in his gameplay was really lacking, other than the fact that and this was sort of telling, there were some matches where I would mirror him, like just sort of do exactly what he was doing, and he did not take that opportunity to say, well, I know what you're doing because I do that too, and here's the counter to it. But then again, I didn't necessarily win all those matches, so again, it's a judgment call in his case, but it's one of those things where there are matches that if you do lose them more often than not, that would be the one thing you need to change more than anything else. And in your case, Nick, it's the opposite advice. I think that you are hyper-adaptive. I think that you notice when I do things, and you notice when I do something repeatedly, especially. I don't like to do 2 or 3 trips in a row against you. I don't like to, because when I do that against you, you immediately go, well, he's going to do another trip, so I'm going to super jump in, or I'm going to, force the issue with this. You notice what I do almost immediately, and you choose to play with it. And that is good from a knowledge standpoint, but it may not be good from a player versus player standpoint, because I know that I'm pressing your buttons. This is a common issue with above average, but not necessarily world-class players. It is a common issue because it is uncommon for players to have lots of game knowledge and experience. You have lots of knowledge and lots of experience, so you feel like more often than not, the reason you win matches is through that knowledge and experience. So when you're playing someone who's not good, the knowledge and experience is why you win, 9 times out of 10. When you're playing against players who match or exceed your knowledge and experience, they are no longer why you win. The reason you win is if you adapt at the right times, and if you Yomi properly, i.e. if you guess right enough. So, as much as it sucks to say this, when you're playing against players who are as good as you or better than you, you need to strive to guess right, which I know is hard to really nail down, and you need to strive to understand if the opponent is looking for things or if they are baiting you. At intermediate and low levels of play, baits are not common because they are difficult and they are tiny and they are hard to see. For me, when I play against you, am trying to bait you into reactions almost all the time, because I feel as though you will react. Now, sometimes, if I do 2 or 3 sweeps in a row, you'll surprise me with something that I wasn't expecting, and that was a good adaptation. But other times, I'll do 2 or 3 sweeps and then just start running away, and you'll super jump at me twice in a row. Again, I'll stress I don't really think there's much from a mechanical standpoint you need to work on. One thing I would say is think about your anti-airs just a little more. I'm starting to think about the jump-in mix-up a little bit more, and I'm going to start mixing up what I do there. I think that a lot of players are doing the parry, wait a sec, jab thing. And there are I think I know the answers to that. One is a very, very delayed jumping attack because you hit the button technically before I hit the ground. It doesn't matter if you hit the parry first because as soon as you hit the jab, the parry window is over. The other thing is empty jump DP, which really, obviously it's risky, but how risky is it? Especially at the start of round 1, you know? Almost everyone parries and then hits something. And so it's like the DP will beat whatever you do. Unless you parry again, but in that case, empty, you know, jump throw would have worked, jump overhead would have worked, jump backdash would have worked, etc., etc. There's really nothing wrong individually with your play, but I feel as though you rely upon your opponent being unfamiliar with or not expecting certain things in order to get your harder fought victories. I think that what you need specifically is a little bit more resilience. Like when you do have a life lead with Crow, when you are in a situation where I am not necessarily winning, I'm trying to win, but I'm not necessarily winning, a little bit more reservation on your part and avoiding getting baited would save you a lot of rounds. You already know, like with Ko, that I'm fishing with crouch hard kick and standing heavy punch. I'm trying to get that super. The hard part is how do I open you up? And you will engage in the footsies with me, and that's all good. But I think that some underutilized things specifically. If you're Crow and you don't want to get counterpoked, throw a fireball. I can't fierce punch a fireball. You'll notice I did that against your Hina. I did that specifically because I know all the things you want to do. On the ground poke with this, on the ground poke with this, on the ground poke with this, chicken wing. Fireball beats all of those. So it doesn't matter what you do if I know or have an inclination of when you're going to do it. The fireball is not there to hit you. It's just there to give you something else to think about, to make you second guess your thought process before you go, I'm just going to throw this thing out there. So that is an example of a simple adaptation I would make that is also relatively low risk. Just some fireballs. You know, unless you're going to start super jumping every time you anticipate a fireball, which is, you know, which is fine. But yeah, to summarize, I would say you have a tendency to be hyper adaptive. Try to be a little bit more resilient. Sometimes fall back on your knowledge and on safe play a little bit more than you are doing now, especially when you have a life lead. And especially with Aja, because I feel like Aja is one of the best characters in the game with a life lead. Especially against the Shotos, because the Shotos have no range. Is that a positivity bot? How does that even work?